Jeff Moore, Patrick Morse, Michael Pate, Jorge Sotolongo, Dave Rosacker is Vice Chair, and I am Greg Rosenbaum, Chairman. Members of the city staff that are in attendance today are Dave Fanslaw, Planning Director, Eric England, Assistant Planning Director, Mike Carter, Current Planning Manager, Tyler Hippica of the City Law Department, and Kathy Epperson is our Recording Secretary. Our rules of procedure are as follows. Notice of this hearing has been published. Copies of today's agenda are located on the table in front of us. You are welcome to come down and pick one up. The cases on the consent agenda will be heard first. Consent cases have been recommended for layover, have already been heard, or are perceived by the planning board to be non-controversial. Therefore, they will be read and voted on without the opportunity for you to state your opinion on the case. If you wish to have this case discussed during this hearing, you may remove the case from the consent agenda. To do so, when each consent case is read, I will ask if anyone wants the case removed for discussion. If you do, please stand up and say so, and the case will be removed. This case will then be heard after we vote on the cases that remained on consent. When the case is heard, you'll have the opportunity to come to the podium, clearly state your name and address, and give your testimony at that time. When hearing cases on the regular agenda, the board will first hear from the applicant. After the applicant states their case, we will hear from the proponents, and then we will hear from the opponents. After both sides are heard, the public hearing will be closed, and no additional testimony will be permitted unless a board member requests additional information. When at the podium, please clearly state your name, address, and whom you are representing for the record. Your testimony is very important to us. In the interest of time and courtesy to others, please be short and to the point. We will try to limit each case to 10 minutes. Those directly involved in the case, please speak first. We request that large groups select a spokesperson to represent that group, therefore eliminating repetitive testimony. When giving testimony, please provide new information and try not to repeat what has been previously said. We do ask that all speakers and others be treated with courtesy and with respect. In that regard, please remain silent while seated, and please turn off your cell phones. Our decision to approve, deny, or continue a case made here today will be forwarded to the City Council for another public hearing and final disposition by the City Council. Conditional use permits are an exception to this rule. The board's decision made here today on conditional use permits are final and not forwarded to the City Council. Lastly, upon the advice of the Law Department, all communications to the board members from attorneys or other interested parties should be transmitted through the Planning Department so that they're made a part of the public record. The department will then transmit all that information to the board as well as to the rest of the public. A current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act can be found in a white binder in this room. We don't have any changes to the consent agenda. We're making a change in our format though with consent agenda, and Eric with the City Planning Department is going to explain what we're doing.
Yeah, hi. So unfortunately, there's several meetings where we go through all the cases, and a lot of times there's one or two individuals still sitting here for a case that was already voted on at the beginning of the agenda in what's called the consent agenda. So we are modifying our procedures a little bit for this meeting to see how it goes. So the agenda that, if you picked one up here today in this room that says consent agenda, we're going off of that. So as you can see, the first 12 or 13 cases, they all are labeled in bold that says consent approval, or there's one that says consent layover, okay? So after I'm done speaking, Chairman Rosenbaum is going to read through the case number, the applicant, the request, and the location for each of those items, and after each one, he might group a couple together if they're the same site. Like the first two listed, number 5 and number 8, are the same site. So he'll read through those, and he will ask anyone if they would like it to be pulled off the consent agenda. If it is not pulled off the consent agenda, it will not be discussed further at today's meeting, okay? For the ones that are recommended for consent approval, they will be approved once they take a vote after reading through the 12 or 13 items. If it's consent layover, it would be laid over after that vote. So I just want to reiterate, Chairman Rosenbaum is going to read through them. If you want that case to be discussed or you want the opportunity to speak on that case, you need to raise your hand and say, yes, I want that off consent, okay? It's a little confusing with the agenda numbers. So when it says 5, number 8, number 6, 9, and so on, we had to do it that way because previous versions of the agenda have identified that in a different order on different versions, okay? And our recommendation reports had a specific agenda item number, so don't focus necessarily on that. That's just kind of a numerical system from previous agendas. But I just want to reiterate that, you know, if you want to speak on it, you have to take it off consent.
You want
Okay.
to talk about maybe when, if it is taken off, when it would be heard
Yep.
then as well?
Thank you, Mr. Payton. So as a change, if an item comes off the consent agenda, we will take those items first, okay? Typically, it would have gone in wherever it placed on the agenda, which wasn't always immediately right away, okay? So if items are taken off consent, we will get to those items first with the public hearing and so forth after the first votes. So thank you for a reminder. I also do want to make note that at 1:20 Central Time, apparently we're all getting an emergency alert on our cell phones, so I don't know if we'll need to take a pause. You know, I'm not really sure if that'll just buzz on our phones or if there'll be loud screeching. So just wanted to point that out for everyone in case you were not aware of that.
Eric, let me just add also that if an item is on consent for layover, you basically have two choices. One, you can take that off today and give your testimony in the public hearing, or two, you can decide, you know what, I'll come back later when it's back on the agenda and it's recommended for approval or denial or whatever. But you have the two choices for today. Eric, if a item's on layover, and how does notification work for the people that are in the neighborhood or close to the project?
If a case is laid over, we do not send notifications if it is back on the agenda the next month. Okay, so sometimes you might need to check with staff here in a few weeks to see if it is back on the agenda. If it is laid over for longer than 1 month, we do resend notifications to property owners within 300 feet of the subject site or neighborhood associations. I assume most of you received a letter if you're here today at the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Eric. We're going to go ahead and get started with the agenda items on for consent. Agenda item number 5, case C12-23-200. It is on consent for approval. Applicant Bluestone Development LLC request preliminary and final plat approval of Nook, a minor plat inside city limits. This was laid over from our September meeting. Location north and south of 8th and Pine Street. And agenda item number 8 goes with it, case C10-10-167, C10-79-130, C9-87-39, C7-23-204. Applicant Bluestone Development LLC. Again, it is on for approval. Request approval of the expansion of the NCE 10th Street Neighborhood Conservation Enhancement Overlay District, along with the approval of the repeal of the PK parking overlay from a portion of the site, and approval of the CUP large project conditional use permit to allow multiple family residential development in excess of 1 acre in the NCE. This was also laid over from our September meeting. Location north and south of 8th and Pine Street. Does anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, it will be removed. Agenda items number 5 and 8. Agenda item number 6. 6 and 9 go together. I'll read both. Agenda item number 6, case C10-23-217, C12-23-218. Applicant KUSP Real Estate LLC. It is on for approval. Request preliminary plat approval of Bedford Heights, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from R435 to R6. Portions of the property are located within the flood fringe and floodway overlay districts. This was laid over from our September meeting. Location 7060 Bedford Avenue. And agenda item number 9, case C11-23-219. Applicant KUSP Real Estate LLC, on for approval. Request approval of a plan unit redevelopment overlay district. This was laid over from our September meeting. Location 7060 Bedford Avenue. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 10, case C8-23-224. Applicant Maritza Rivera de Anguiana. Did I say that right? Anguiana. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow a daycare services general in the R435 district. This was also laid over from our September meeting. Location 3112 South 44th Ave. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 17, case C10-23-235. Applicant Juan Sanchez. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from GI to R5. Location 1311 South 21st Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 18, case C10-23-236. Applicant Juan Sanchez. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from R435 to R5. Location 6128 Pierce Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 19, case C10-23-239. Applicant Cesar Garcia. It is on for approval. Request rezoning from GC to CC. Property is located within an ACI area of civic importance overlay district. Location 4425 South 24th Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 20, case C10-23-234. Applicant John Burt. It is on for approval. Request approval of the ACI area of civic importance overlay district. Location southeast of 72nd and Pine Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 21, case C8-23-238. Applicant Alice Baker. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow daycare services general in the R435 district. Location 6124 Allison Avenue. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 22, case C8-23-243, C7-23-244. Applicant Joel Doherty. It is on for approval. Request approval of a special use permit to allow a medical office in the GI district, along with approval of a conditional use permit to allow a daycare services general in the GI district. Location southeast of 30th and Al Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 24, case C14-23-237. Applicant Planning Board. It is on for approval. Request approval of the vacation of a portion of Newport Avenue right-of-way located between 48th Street and 49th Street, along with a portion of 48th Avenue right-of-way located between Newport Avenue and Reddick Avenue, as well as a portion of north-south alley right-of-way between Newport Avenue and Reddick Avenue. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Okay, those are the end of our consent cases. Before I ask, oh, I'm sorry. We got the layover. Agenda item number 16, case C12-23-241. Applicant AVG-CFM 204Q LLC. It is on for layover. Request preliminary and final plat approval, a Coventry replat 17, a minor plat outside city limits. Location northwest of 204th and Harrison Street. Anyone wish to have this removed? Okay, seeing none. Okay, now that ends the consent items. Before I ask for a vote on items on consent, does everybody understand those items that I just read that were left on consent? We're going to vote on them and no further action will be taken today. So if everybody's got that, okay. From consent items that are on for approval, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve case number 6, 9, 10, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 24.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris,
No, they were taken off.
Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo.
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Okay, do we have a motion for the consent items that were on for layover?
Motion layover case 16.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Franklin,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Morris, Pate,
Yes.
Sotolongo,
Yes.
Rosacker,
Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
approved 7-0.
Okay. Those items that were left on consent have been voted on. No further action will be taken today. You are free and welcome to stay, or you are free to leave. It's up to you. But we're going to take up the cases 5 and 8. They were on consent. And we'll get going with those. Consent item, agenda item number 5, case C12-23-200. Applicant Bluestone Development LLC request preliminary and final plat approval of Nook, a minor plat inside city limits, laid over from September meeting, location north and south of 8th and Pine Street. And agenda item number 8, case C10-10-167, C10-79-130, C9-87-39, C7-23-204. Applicant Bluestone Development LLC request approval of the expanse of the NCE 10th Street Neighborhood Conservation and Enhancement Overlay District, along with approval of the repeal of the PK parking overlay from a portion of the site and approval of a CUP large project conditional use permit to allow multiple family residential development in excess of 1 acre in the NCE. This was laid over from our September meeting, location north and south of 8th and Pine Street. Larry, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. With me today is Deborah and Christian Christensen, the developers, the Bluestone folks. Also with me today is Joe Zadina of Lamper Nearson, the consulting engineers on this particular project, and also Todd Moeller of Alley Pointer, the architects for this particular project. I'll be brief because this was on consent agenda for approval. I would just add a couple things, and then I guess we'll respond to opposition and then take any questions that you all may have. I would just point out that this is consistent with the master plans, consistent with the NCE plan that was already, overlay district that was already approved. This is just an enlargement of that plan. Everything that's being proposed with this development is consistent with that plan. There's no waivers being requested of any kind, and we meet all the site regulators. We meet the parking requirements. The architecture is consistent with the urban design code. There's your warning.
Sorry, Larry, you're done.
System works.
Can we turn the volume down or turn it? It won't work. There it goes. Okay, go ahead, Larry.
All right, sorry about that. I guess I didn't cause that, did I? I felt like I did. So, uh-oh. Is that again? Someone's late.
Different services.
Well,
Yeah, different service. There you go. In any event, hopefully you all recall what I just said after that. The other thing that I would point out is that there was numerous neighborhood meetings regarding this. There was small group meetings. There were large group meetings earlier this year in June. And Deborah and Christian reminded me, back when they first started looking at this project, which was 7 years ago, believe it or not, and then COVID hit and it kind of was delayed, that there was this plan that the neighborhood put together with RDG. And what Deborah and Christian did as part of this development is made sure that what they were developing and what they were proposing was even consistent with that original neighborhood plan that RDG put together 4 years ago or so. So with that, and then I guess I would just point out, we did have the redevelopment plan that went to the city council yesterday, and it was unanimously approved 7-0. So the redevelopment plan that you all heard in August, and my understanding is you had an hour discussion, so that's why I don't want to take too much of your time getting into the details, and if you have specific questions, we can address those. But again, the redevelopment plan that you all recommended for approval in August was approved yesterday unanimously by the city council. So with that, happy to answer any questions and respond to any opposition.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents? When you come forward, please give your name and address also. Thank you.
Afternoon, members. My name is Kim Kalkowski. I live at 1502 South 10th Street.
Did you say Kim?
Yeah, Kim.
Okay, thank you.
My dad was Ken. I'm just reiterating everything that was said in the small group meetings that were like 10 of us that we had with them in May. Repeating the same thing we said when there were 80 to 100 of us, which we had in June at the Cabrini Parish Center, in May, in June, and at your planning board in August. Pretty much everybody said scale's way too big for the neighborhood. You don't have enough parking, and what is this bringing to our neighborhood? We're told that we live in a blighted area. We do not, but I guess it's a nice little fig leaf that somebody in administration, not your administration, city comes up with to say, hey, there's a buck to be made, which is all this seems like to me. I mean, we, the residents of the neighborhood, are going to be inundated with 400 to 500 more cars. We live, if you've ever been down to Little Italy, 13th Street has 4 lanes, but every other street is a 2-lane street. We don't have the capacity to deal with it. I showed some of these pictures yesterday, and taking pictures, that's on William Street looking east from 10th up to 8th, and I believe Bluestone counts all of those as their parking places. These are people parked in no parking zones, and that's because there's not enough parking already because Dahlman Flats doesn't have enough space. Dahlman Flats said that they did have enough spaces, but they didn't have enough spaces, so then they came back and they leased 46 spaces from the city. So we were told as a community, don't sweat it, these are all your spaces to use too, and then 46 were taken away. We had no input on any of that, so you can say one thing and then do another. These are more people parked in no parking zone, more people parked in no parking zone. This is, there's not enough parking there right now. We've asked them repeatedly. They have 188 off-street spaces. There's 250 apartments. 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. I just really need somebody to tell me how anybody really believes that only one person will live in every 1 bedroom apartment, only one person will live in every 2 bedroom apartment, and nobody will ever visit them. And then that's counting all these spaces on the street as theirs, which is what they did when they put in Nove, which is what they did when they put in anything, Little Bow. They count these spaces as theirs, and then they're not. They're like public spaces, unless, of course, they go and lease them from the city. So we're just looking at our neighborhood being inundated. We're looking at traffic jams. We're looking at our entire quality of life kind of going to hell in a handbasket. And I don't, I mean, it doesn't matter how many times we've said it. I mean, I believe you said that there wasn't any controversy. There's no controversy from them or their investors. They had their TIF plan, you know, not the final approval done yesterday, but pretty well on its way. I was told at the beginning, you know, 5 months ago, this is a done deal. Don't waste your time and breath. And so every time we've had our meetings with them and here before the planning board and at city council, tell me how it isn't just like investors want to come into whatever neighborhood, not just mine, other ones too. How they say that they consulted with us. They consulted with us if consulted means listening to somebody and then doing nothing about it. So, I mean, yeah, we know that we're arguing against the behemoth of money, power, everything else around the city, and it's just frustrating beyond belief. The neighborhood doesn't want it. Yes, they have pretty color facades. Yes, they did a really nice job designing it. It would be a great project, but not in our neighborhood. Our neighborhood cannot support it. So I mean, I don't know, I believe any of you would be standing in my place if this were your neighborhood. If you were gonna have somebody come in and just wholesale take over your neighborhood and not have the infrastructure, you can't do anything with our streets. You can't widen them. You can't do a traffic study to change anything. We had the Pine School, the 2019 study that was done. You know, that was done, they said, oh yeah, it'll be fine for the Pine School, and they were kind of in the background at that time. Oh yeah, it'll be fine when you add all these cars to the neighborhood. We've asked them, one gentleman asked them 3 times in the June meeting at the parish hall, can you tell us how many people live in your 1-bedrooms, because they were talking about all their other developments, who you have 2 people on the lease for. So we're just trying to really get a lot, nope, we have no way of knowing that. So we don't know. I mean, for all I know, everybody in 1-bedroom does only have 1 car, but in my apartment building, every 1-bedroom has 2 cars, and several of them have 3 cars because one people in the couple has a company car. So the one-on-one equivalency is saying that with 188 spaces and counting, God only knows, like 70 more, 80 more on the street, the 80 on the street are not theirs, and they're not going to have 250 cars there. They're going to have at a minimum 400. So I would just, I had brought up before, if you want to rent half of your apartments at half price to somebody who only has a bicycle or only has a Metro bus pass, cool. All from 8th down to 13th is a 5-block walk, so it's not like there's any public transportation anywhere. We have nothing on 10th Street. I mean, I sound like an angry, frustrated person only because I am right now, because it doesn't matter what we say. And so it's demoralizing to have to come and try and make a point that you gotta be reasonable, and this doesn't pass any reasonable standard. I mean, one city council yesterday told me there's never gonna be unanimity on anything. I wasn't asking for unanimity. I was looking for some kind of a give, take, here. Like, it's gonna come to our neighborhood, but can it please be scaled down? Because we cannot support 250 apartment units. There is, you know, green space, which we're gonna lose. We're gonna lose probably 75 trees. All of that been told, but there's nothing we're getting out of it. Nothing. Nothing. We're not getting a grocery store in our neighborhood, which we desperately need and we've been asking the city for years. There's no positive to this for us. So I appreciate you very much listening. I would just like really to work with you and to come to some kind of Missouri compromise on this, because you are not going to live there. You are not going to live there. It's our neighborhood that's going to be trashed, and the bell can't be unrung once you've trashed it. It's kind of gone. So it would be really lovely if some of us could feel, again, a lot of people had to work today, couldn't take off work again. It would be really lovely to just feel that y'all aren't rubber stamps, and that anything that comes your way, you go ahead and appoint or approve, because we've spoken up. of course, I'm biased. This is my opinion, so of course I think my opinion has some merit, but I can't see how it doesn't at least hold some water. I'm not standing up here holding a leaky bucket saying, "Meh," not. I would just really love if one of you could even tell me that you wouldn't be standing up here if it were your neighborhood that was going to go to trash. So I'm sure there are 50 other things I wanted to say, but you guys have other business too. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kim. Any other opponents? No, okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Larry, did you want to come up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road. Yeah, just to respond and answer any questions that you all might have is, first of all, again, there was collaboration with the neighborhood. There was a sincere attempt to fit into the fabric of the neighborhood with respect to the architecture, and I have the elevations if you'd like to see those again. But there was a lot of thought put into this particular development, and the zoning that's currently there, the R7, I believe, would allow 361 units. We're only putting in 250 units. So there is a significant reduction from what would actually be permitted under the base district zoning and the NCE that currently exists on a portion of the property. There was a traffic study, as you guys know, it was discussed in August, that was discussed, and there was a traffic study that was collaborated with the Pine school, elementary school, I should say, and what that traffic study showed is that there was no public improvements required, meaning that the street systems were adequate to serve the school, the surrounding properties, and this proposed development. So from a traffic perspective, the traffic study is, this project is compliant with that. The public improvements and infrastructure are sufficient to serve this area. With respect to the parking, there was 250 parking stalls required. We actually provided 264, so we're in excess of the parking. What I pointed out yesterday at City Council is that there are 186 off-street parking spaces. There are 78 on-street parking spaces. But you have to remember that this proposed project is fairly spread out. So the on-street parking with the 78 stalls on the street systems is spread out almost over 3 entire blocks. So it's not concentrated on one particular street or segment of a street. It's spread out throughout the entire proposed development. With respect to the blight and substandard designation, that has already been decided. It was designated blighted and substandard, and then when the extremely blighted and substandard designation came out, it was actually then designated as extremely blighted and substandard, which allows for the 20-year TIF that you probably heard in August as well. Again, I think there's $45 million being invested in this project. I think Bluestone's reputation speaks for itself throughout the city. They've always been a good neighbor in every project that they've ever done here, and they've always gone, overboard in my view to make sure that they're good neighbors and make sure that they are compatible with the adjacent neighborhoods that they are developing in. So with that, I appreciate Ms. Kowalkowski's testimony, but this is really the best compromise that we have, and this is the project that's before you, and a lot of thought and effort was put into making sure that it does fit within their neighborhood, so and minimizes any adverse impacts as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
The street parking, that's not just designated for the apartment?
No, it's just public streets.
It's public street parking, correct?
Correct, that's
Okay.
correct.
I just want to make sure that.
And I'd point out, this is the NCE plan that we're enlarging. So this was an existing document and we're not changing this document, we're just expanding the area for the overlay district. And you get to page 23, and it says, it's intended that on-street parking be fully utilized within the district. So, that was in the NCE plan. That was what was called for. So there's nothing out of the ordinary with respect to 78 parking stalls being on the street.
any other comments or questions for Larry? Okay, thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Before we go to Eric, any other comments or questions? Nope. Eric?
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate, this was previously laid over for the project in needing additional stormwater requirements and materials submitted to the city. If it wasn't for that, this would have been recommended for approval a couple of months ago. Those stormwater items have been provided, and Public Works is comfortable with that information and moving forward, subject to the conditions laid out in the 2 recommendation reports. So unless you have any questions for me, we will take agenda item number 5 first. And the city recommends approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 4 conditions in the report. Approval of the final plat subject to compliance with the conditions of preliminary plat approval and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to city council.
Sir, I'm sorry, I closed the public hearing, so.
Where he said that there was parking, there's actually no parking around that school,
Sir, I closed the public hearing.
so he just lied. And that's where all the parking is supposed to be.
Sir, please. Before I ask for a motion, I just, and maybe I shouldn't address this, but Kim brought it up that sometimes we're looked upon as a rubber stamp board, and that, I just want to say that by the time most projects get to the planning board, the planning department has spent months, if not years, on projects with the developer, and they work on them and require things, and the developer makes things happen, and it goes back and forth. By the time they get to us, most projects have been worked out and they fit zoning.
They said that we've known for
Sir,
10 years
I'm gonna
about
ask to
that.
have you removed if you keep going. Most projects, our board, we are a zoning board. And sometimes you take up projects with the city council, they have a little bit more latitude, but when we look at things and the planning department gets everything figured out according to zoning, that's when we see it. So every now and then, there may be some discretionary item that we have to look at, but 99% of the time, the problems are worked out before they get to the board. Anybody else have anything to say, or? Okay. I'm gonna ask for, do we have a motion on agenda item number 5?
I'll move approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 4 conditions outlined in the recommendation report, and approval of the final plat subject to compliance with the conditions of the preliminary plat approval and submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding the request on to city council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris? Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, agenda item number 8.
Yeah, so for
Eric.
agenda item 8, this pertains to several items. It's the expansion of the NCE, as Larry had mentioned, the repeal of the parking overlay that's on a portion of the site, and then approval of a conditional use permit large project, which is a requirement of that 10th Street NCE plan. There was a comment previously about on-street parking and maybe not being allowed, so I do just want to point out condition number 3 in part of the conditional use permit request is the proposed parking changes to allow parking on the south side of Pine Street and the east side of 8th Street is subject to further evaluation by the Public Works Traffic Division. It may be subject to the applicant providing for public street paving improvements. So, that's continued, an item that Public Works is continuing to analyze regarding the on-street and, the circulation around the school, and sometimes there's one way and two way. So I just wanted to point that out. For agenda item number 8, staff recommends approval of the expansion of the NCE 10th Street Neighborhood Conservation Enhancement Overlay District, approval of the repeal of the PK overlay for a portion of the site, approval of the conditional use permit large project to allow multifamily residential in excess of 1 acre subject to the 7 conditions in the report.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move for the approval of the expansion of the 10th Street Neighborhood Conservation and Enhancement Overlay District. Approval of the repeal of the PK parking overlay from a portion of the site. Approval of the conditional use permit, large project, conditional use permit to allow multiple family residential development in excess of 1 acre in the NCE, subject to the following 7 conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Franklin.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Sotolongo.
Yes.
Rosack.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, the next part of the meeting is administrative only for agenda items number 1 and 2, which means there will be no opportunity for public testimony. Agenda item number 1, case C10-20-45, case C12-20-46. Applicant Woodsonia North Streams LLC. Request final plat approval of North Streams, lots 209 through 321, outlots I and J, a subdivision outside city limits with rezoning from AG to DR and R4. Location northeast of 204th and Q Streets. Eric.
Yeah, so this is the second phase of North Streams. This includes 112 single-family lots, 1 lot for a park, and 2 outlots. The full site includes 174 acres and 327 lots with a combination of residential and mixed-use zoning. The first phase was approved by City Council October 2021. There's not a lot of items that need pointing out for this. We'll need a final tree mitigation plan and acceptable subdivision agreement prior to City Council. So staff recommends approval of the rezoning from AG to DR and R4, approval of the final plat subject to the 3 conditions in the report prior to City Council.
Any comments or questions from the board? Do we have a motion?
Motion approved, final plat, subject to meeting the 3 conditions of the staff report prior to forwarding to City Council. On approval of rezoning from AG to DR and R4.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore. Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Sotolongo.
Yes.
Rosacker.
Yes.
Franklin. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 2, case C10-23-50, C12-23-51. Applicant Joel Wickman. Request final plat approval of Brookstone Meadows Replat 3, a subdivision inside city limits with rezoning from AG and R7 to R7, along with approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District. A portion of the property is located within a planned unit development overlay district. Location, southeast of 204th and Harney Street. Eric.
Yeah, so the preliminary plat of Brookstone Meadows Replat 3 came to the planning board back in June and then approved by City Council on August 15th. It includes 2 lots as an expansion of the assisted living facility for individual villas. Just want to point out there's one comment from OPPD for the applicant to continue to coordinate the access drive as it aligns with some power pole structures within the boundaries of the site. Staff recommends approval of the MCC overlay district, approval of the rezoning from AG and R7 to R7, approval of the final plat subject to submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to City Council.
Any comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
I move approval of the MCC Major Commercial Corridor Overlay District, approval of the rezoning from AG and R7 to R7, and approval of the final plat, subject to the submittal of an acceptable final subdivision agreement prior to forwarding the request on to City Council for final action.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Morris.
Yes.
Pate.
Yes.
Sotolongo.
Yes.
Rosacker.
Yes.
Franklin.
Yes.
Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Moving on to the regular agenda. Agenda item number 3, case C3-23-226. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of the 30th and Fowler TIF redevelopment project plan laid over from our September meeting. Location, northwest of 30th Street and Fowler Avenue. Don, you're up.
Yeah, good afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. The 30th and Fowler Tax Increment Financing Project Plan combines 6 parcels located along North 30th Street near Aldi's Grocery. See, here's Sorensen Parkway, North 30th. It's on the west side of North 30th. The project site contains 3 single-family homes. They're in poor condition. These will be demolished. and a new commercial building of about 4,185 square feet will be constructed. This rendering gives you a kind of a feel for the design and style of the building. It's not quite literal with the site plan in terms of how it will be constructed, but gives you a good flavor for the building. The developer will lease the space. The tenant will be a financial institution. We'll have a surface parking lot on the site with 29 stalls. The project is in an extremely blighted area, so it'll be a 20-year term TIF. The developer is Woodsonia Fowler LLC, managed by Mitch Holen. Total project investment in North Omaha is about $2.7 million. The TIF support is $322,179. Project meets the required criteria of the TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for the area. We ask for your support.
Okay, thank you, Don. Any other proponents?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Bob Griffith, 11440 Weston Road, here on behalf of the applicant, Woodsonia Fowler, LLC. Thank you, Don, for your help in your presentation. Thank you as well to the city staff. They worked with us closely to get the project to this point, so we, as always, are grateful for their guidance. Just add a couple things. As John indicated, this will be most likely a financial institution. We're anticipating about 10 very high-quality permanent jobs to locate in that community. So that's a big positive to this particular project as well. There's about $100,000 in public improvements. Other than that, happy to answer any questions. I would also point out that there's been good outreach to the community as far as neighborhood associations. We've reached out to the Fabric Association, Miller Park, and Monmouth Park neighborhood associations, and that communication is ongoing. I've also reached out to Councilwoman Johnson, have her speak with us about her suggestions and inputs as well, and so we're setting up a meeting with her offices hopefully this next coming week. So with that, happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you, Bob. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Eric?
Yeah, I would just add that the planning board recommended approval of the rezoning last month to change the commercial zoning to a different designation from GC to CC. Staff recommends approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo? Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Moore? Morris? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 4. Case C12-23-192, applicant REI Funding Group LLC, request preliminary plat approval of Hanson's Country Club Hills replat 4, a subdivision inside city limits. This was laid over from our September meeting, location northeast of 72nd Street and Silver Valley Road. May we hear from the applicant, please?
Joe, press it a little further.
There it is.
Hello, I'm Joe Foley with Foley Sheld Engineering, 14503 Grover Street here in Omaha. Here representing the applicant, who's also in attendance here. Basically what we have here is a little bit of an infill project at 72nd and Silver Valley Road, which is actually just south of Country Club Road for reference. The lots, there's existing platted lots on the site that have been there for decades. And I know a few different proposed projects have come through here. What we're proposing is to replat the 12 existing lots, one of which actually fronts 72nd Street, into 13 R2 zoned lots. We're keeping the zoning the same, and all the lots would be accessed from the interior streets. There would be one outlot for stormwater detention to meet the stormwater requirements. We are proposing to use street improvement districts and sewer improvement district to do some of the infrastructure work. That work would include the improving of about 600 feet of the existing street system into streets that meet the city standard. A lot of the neighborhood doesn't quite meet that yet, so the main entrance coming into the neighborhood would be city standard built streets. With that, I'm going to leave it to any questions you might have, and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Joe. Any other proponents?
Good afternoon, Mike Rogers, 6924 Starlight Drive, 68152. I represent today our Hanson's Country Club Neighborhood Association. We have been involved in projects over the years. We feel this is a good project at this point. Our neighborhood, of course, does have some concerns, and we're still working on those details, that being congestion, construction traffic, and the state of our streets. We noticed on the plat that there's going to be some improvement. We hope to continue to work with the necessary parties that we can get some help in doing some improvements. Bringing a project in of 13 is a whole lot less than maybe the 22 we looked at last year or the year before. So 13 is a number that we as a neighborhood group can find acceptable. Congestion's a problem. Are we going to have to deal with one developer or 13 for the number of plats, one for each? We do have some concerns. We understand this is a first step to get things really moving, and we'd like to see things get moving. And we're hoping that this will make sure we have good communication between ourselves and the development partners. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any other proponents?
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Tushner, REI Funding Group, LLC, 3322 North 265th Court, Waterloo, Nebraska. I'm in support of this. I became involved with this property in 2020. There was a developer whose intent was to develop the property to single family homes. It's been vacant all this time. And so my role was basically to provide funding for the ground. So I provided funding for the ground, had a deed of trust against it, and that was going to be my limit of my role. Unfortunately, this developer that was going to be doing the development, his first plans showed 27 lots. It's currently platted for 12. Had significant opposition from the neighborhood, justifiably. No support from city councilmen for that area either. Subsequent ones were 24, then 22, and you wouldn't budge after that. It was not going to go anywhere, and so basically nothing happened on it. Finally, after 2 years, the time it was all supposed to be done, nothing had been done other than it accumulated 2 more years of unpaid taxes. So I had to execute a deed of trust, a trustee sale, and take over the ground. We did meet with the neighbors, met with city councilmen, try and find out what's going to take to get this moving. Well, the thing was very clear. The neighborhood has large lots. It's near Country Club. Tiny little lots isn't going to cut it for support. They made it very clear they did want to see it developed versus just vacant ground where it is today, but they wanted to have larger lots. So we started contacting developers, like who would like to build this. Well, several interested parties. Nobody will touch it the way it is because the current 12 plats, one of the lots is on 72nd Street. The address is 7525 North 72nd Street. City doesn't want access to 72nd Street. The other thing that the city doesn't like about the current platting is there is no outlot for storm water retention and all that sort of thing. So in working with the engineer, it's been redrawn to have 13 lots, 1 lot with stormwater retention to satisfy the city's requirements there, and none of the lots accessing directly to 72nd Street. Part of that is also the new street improvements on the main entrance to there, which also all the adjoining property which goes up Glendale Avenue too. So that would be another part of the improvement. So we feel that this addresses what the neighborhood is looking for. They want to see it developed. No developers want to touch it until it gets replatted as something they can work with. So that's where we are today, trying to get it replatted as something that makes it appealing to a developer. And based on the fact that it's considerably larger lots than are generally available for infill areas, that would kind of dictate, upscale houses in the area, which would match also.
Mike,
Any
I got a
questions?
quick question for you. So
Yes.
are all these lots pre-sold?
No, none of them are.
None of them are?
None of them
So
are.
how quick do you anticipate the absorption to be on these lots? Do you have any kind of idea how long it will take to get them all sold?
I don't. I'm going to defer to Kevin for that, who's going to speak also. But my intent was, or my hope is that another developer, and there has been several that have expressed interest, but not the way it's platted. You guys get it through platting, okay, now we'll talk type of thing. But that would then take the project and then tackle it from there as one. If that is preferred to the other option of that we just hold the ground and we let individual builders build on them and we sell off the lots individually. Both options are open right now. The desire would be one developer to tackle it and make a 13 home addition.
I would think it wouldn't take long for that area to be fully absorbed because of
I
the
get-
feel of the area.
I get letters.
the size of the lots.
I get letters, hey, I'm interested in a lot.
And I think the neighborhood would probably appreciate it
yes.
as well that way,
And,
so that's why I asked the question.
The agent who's handling fielding the calls for it also gets calls all the time about, hey, I'm interested in a lot. So we've got a lot of inquiries for individual lots.
Good.
Trying to make it a package for a developer.
Sure.
That's the preferred way. Any other questions for me?
Not a question, just statement. I want to thank you for working with the neighborhood, changing the lot size, all that, and keeping that communication open. So
Yeah.
thank you for doing that.
Been working with them, trying to give them updated drawings and everything like that, because I understand their perspective. They want to see it develop. Great, so do I.
Yeah.
But we both need to get it to a place where there's somebody interested in it, since the city, we did have a meeting September of last year with the city councilman, and then he sent us to the city planning board. We did have a meeting with them, and looking at the current plat in here saying, if you want to build on this, no, we're not going to let you, because we're not going to have somebody access directly to 72nd Street. You don't have an outlot for stormwater retention. That's a deficiency in the current platting. So it's okay, well, what do we need to do to get it meeting those types of codes? And that's what Joe has worked on.
Just to expand on what I said a little earlier is for developers, if they don't work with the neighbors or don't meet with the neighbors, that's an easy no vote from the planning board.
Understand.
So, yeah.
Understand that.
Okay.
Any other questions for me?
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other proponents?
Good afternoon, Kevin Irish, 5416 South 169th Street. I've been representing Mike from REI Funding on this project. He's been wanting to sell the ground, and I think my opinion with Mike has been, I think we need to get this thing platted. I think it's hard to get it sold the way it is. So once we get it platted, then I think we can either sell it to a developer or individuals. But I think someone's going to need to know that the improvements are going to be coming and it is going to be platted, because it's kind of hard to sell a lot right now because there's so much up in the air. I think that Mike has done a fabulous job taking care of the weeds, meeting with the neighbors. I've met with the neighbors as well. But I think it's, as Mr. Pate has suggested, I think it's a great infill project. The lots are 1/4 to 1/3 of an acre. They're large, 80 by 280 on average, and that's not seen around town very much. We're having a little bit of a hiccup with the interest rates for residential housing at this moment, but that'll straighten up. It's still not bad at 7.5%. So I think once we get it platted, we'll find a developer that'll come in and do the improvements, myself included, might be involved. And then I think we can either sell individual lots or to a builder. We met with several, but they wanted to get us through these first through hurdles before we could really market it, put it on the market. So, but we've had great support with the neighbors. We've met with them numerous times. I can't imagine how many tacos and beers we've had, but I think it's been to our benefit and to theirs as well. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Tom Bogatz, 7415 Silver Valley Road. And I had a couple of concerns. One was, since our property is right across the street from the main drainage outlet, that be covered, and it sounds like there is conversations about doing that. The other one is the maintenance and of the two outlots. What is going to be planted there? What is that going to look like? And who is going to maintain it? That is my the two concerns.
Paulette Bogetz, 7415 Silver Valley Road. First of all, we have never been approached by any of the developers, never, and we're 300 feet away from them. I would strongly object to having, before it's been sold, it didn't work out what they wanting to put 27 places on there. It didn't work out. But I would be very, I would not care for several, I want it to be sold as one builder doing it, and so that it's not hodgepodge. It's, I would not like it to be sold in individual lots. I believe it should be sold as the whole thing, and a one developer take care of it, so it has some consistency and doesn't bring down the value of our homes. Right now, the empty lot is not bringing down the value of our homes, but if it was a hodgepodge, it would bring down the value. So, thank you.
Paula, real quick, is it Paula?
Paulette, yes.
Paulette, sorry. So, does Country Club Hills have a homeowners association?
Yes, it does.
Do they have covenants that dictate architectural style and structure?
Yes.
I assume
yes,
they do.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So within that, then they have to conform within those architectural requirements on your homeowners association.
Okay.
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 Should comply with it.
Okay.
Okay, so I think you're okay with it.
Thank you.
Any other opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close public hearing. Oh, Michael, you are, just a second. I'm going to close the public hearing. Mike, come on up if you want to make a quick point.
Good afternoon again. I am representing our neighborhood association as per covenants. Oh, Mike Rogers, 6924 Starlight Drive, 68152. The covenants that were in existence, they're still in existence, but they are not valid, and they were written back in the 60s. My understanding is they are not applicable to the building conditions we have now. That's number one. Number two, although the developers, and I don't think any of them have ever reached out to any, or not many, individual homeowners. They've always reached out to the homeowners association, our neighborhood association. So we have had good, I would call it good, interactions and communications. So we have lines of communications open. We do have, as co-president and my other co-president of our association, we hand out flyers to those who have not been able to provide us with email address. We hand deliver those typically. We do have email address list that's huge, covers almost 125 of the people in homes in our area. So we do have communication going on to the homeowners. Sometimes they get our stuff and sometimes they don't. But we've been at this for long enough that we hope that everyone knows who they can call and say, I got a problem. The Bogatz's situation is pretty critical. They sit right at the corner of what looks nice now and what's going to be ugly once the trucks start rolling. We understand that's construction business. We get that. Certainly, this is an opportunity for these people to make money, and we are all for that. But we do have our neighborhood, and our neighborhood is personal to us. We got to live there. Someone else earlier said, you don't. And it's a nice area. We like to keep it nice. We like to get some growth in. We like to see some new homes and good homes. And we're hoping that communication can stay as it is and or improve. And we certainly will take it up with the Bogatzes and make sure they are fully informed as best we can inform them of the outcomes of our conversations here and with the developers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions from the board? Joe, did you want to come up and address anything, or it sounds like everybody's working together, and I'm giving you the opportunity if you want.
Joe Foley, Foley-Schultz Engineering, 14503 Grover. I think the one question that Mr. Borgert said that didn't quite get addressed was the stormwater.
Yep.
The basin that's proposed does equalize the pre and post development flow. That's the intent of it. So the stormwater runoff shouldn't be any worse, and that basin would be landscaped, and there's maintenance agreements that get recorded against the property that it has to be maintained forever, essentially. So it should never become an eyesore at the entrance area.
Joe, so will there be a collective HOA set up for that ownership or maintenance, or is that still being worked out? Obviously, you know.
I think there will be a association for the new 13 lots to maintain that basin. Is I think what the intent would be.
Yeah, and I was just going to make a recommendation as far as the covenants. You know, I would assume there would be some covenants put in place for the 13 lots just for, you know, the developer's interest as well.
Right.
You know, anytime you have platted lots that date back to the late 1960s, it's usually not carried over that there are active covenants. So that would be rare. But, you know, you could always provide a copy of proposed covenants with submittal of the final plat. And of course, the city is not a party to those covenants, so it's not binding or anything with the subdivision agreement, but that could be part of the submittal and something we've seen in the past to be able to provide to neighbors. And it doesn't have to be done with the final plat, but sometimes that's a good place to submit.
So Joe, you did say that there's going to be an SID form for the improvement, right?
Not the traditional, a street improvement district. It's right. We're within the city limits, so it'd be a sewer improvement district and a street improvement district. Okay. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for Joe? Thank you, Joe.
Yep.
Eric. Yeah. So I don't have much to add. Obviously, several of the testifiers kind of recap the history, which I had mentioned in the pre-meeting and last month, that, yeah, we've seen a lot of different versions and renditions of potential replats and development for this site. So it's good to see that, you know, in the past we have had some pretty stark opposition and quite a few letters for some of those proposals. So it is good to see there's a lot of progress being made. So with that being said, we get to the right page here. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 9 conditions in the report.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move approval of the preliminary plat of Hanson's Country Club Hills Replat 4, subject to the 9 conditions outlined in the recommendation report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
We're going to take agenda items 7 and 11 together. Agenda item number 7. Case C12-23-171, applicant James T. Smith Jr. requests preliminary plat approval of Smoky Ridge 2, a subdivision outside city limits with the waiver to section 5399 sidewalks laid over from our July meeting. Location 13111 North 72nd Street. And agenda item number 11, case C8-23-183, applicant James Smith Jr. requests approval of a special use permit to allow development in the ED North Hills Environmental Resources Overlay District, also laid over from July. Location 13111 North 72nd Street. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
Elizabeth Hunter with Snyder and Associates. I'm an engineer and a planner. The address is 11850 Nicholas Street here in Omaha. We've been here before, so I will just reiterate the location. It's right to the east of 72nd Street, which is shown here, this street up and down, and then this street here is Northern Hills Drive. So this spot right here is the location where the Irvington Volunteer Fire Department is. And so utilizing the road in that you see drawn with the curvy sawgrass road here, utilizing that road, we would connect to it to the north for the additional lots that we have planned. We'll zoom out. We have met since the last time I was here. We did meet with the neighborhood area, larger than the area that you guys reach out to. Jason from the Volunteer Fire Department helped plan that at the fire department location. We did take attendance. We turned that into the planning board. There was a nice crowd. Lots of people came. So we've amended a few things here to try to comply with the comments that we've actually met with the planning department a couple times since the last time we've met as well, to go over different things. But I feel like the stuff that we're presenting now meets all the conditions that they had given to us through the planning department, and we've tried to ameliorate the concerns from the neighborhood as much as we can that still works for the development. So I do have one item that came out in the staff report that is possibly not correct about the tree mitigation. I think there's a little confusion on the number. In the staff report it says 37 trees, but we had turned in an amended one when we changed the development and the location of we went from rain gardens to a pond, and so we kind of changed all the disturbance areas. And so we had turned in an intermediate version that said that we need to do 25 trees, and so I think there's a little confusion on which we need. However, whether it be 25 or 37, fine, we'll just have to work out what is really true. I sent all that earlier to Michael and the rest of the planning department that was working with us on that to try to get it cleared up. So I think that's, and there's one other thing. The owner, I don't think, is able to be here today, Jim. He said rather than doing streetlights, he would like to change the request to do sidewalks on one side of the street, because that would match what is happening in the development to the east, Ponca Hills, and I think that is also what is happening in the Smoky Ridge development that's already underway. No streetlights on any of those, and so he just wanted to match that rather than getting the waiver to do no sidewalks at all. So those are the only two changes from the staff report that we asked for. Otherwise, any questions, I'm here to answer. I can leave any of this map up if anybody wants to look at it. So
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the entirety of that last comment. Could you say what you said again about the sidewalks and streetlights? I'm sorry.
The staff report indicated that we were asking for a waiver to not do sidewalks, and their response was that we would need to then supply adequate lighting street lighting to the development for that. And I think it was just a miscommunication between myself and the owner, Jim, of what he really wanted. And he clarified to me that he doesn't want to do streetlights, so he would like to proceed with the plan to do sidewalks on one side of the street versus two sides of the street and not do the streetlights.
Just thinking, I live in a neighborhood that does not have sidewalks, and we have
developments. I'm not positive about Smoky Ridge, but Ponca Hills has sidewalks on one side of the street, and we would do that as well.
The same thing as, so
Yeah.
that's an existing.
Right. It's under development right now, so.
Okay. I got to give that some thought. Any other questions for Elizabeth? Okay, thank you. Any other proponents wishing to speak? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
Jason LaFerrier, 7110 Stargrass Road, representing Irvington Volunteer Fire Department. Chairman of the board, distinguished members of the board, thank you. Elizabeth did mention it. We did hold a public meeting for everybody in the area to kind of come speak their piece. And the results of that meeting weren't exactly favorable towards the developers, as you could probably imagine. But the meeting was held per our discussions last time. And also the concerns I had brought up regarding added traffic to the development with responding emergency apparatus. I've been working with Ryan Haas with the City Public Works Department so we can try to come up with a solution to kind of get that rectified. Don't know if that has any bearing on your decision or not, but we have been talking about that. The thing I've got a big question on the most is the tree mitigation plan. Jim Smith, when he bought the property, he came in right away, guns blazing, removed a lot of trees. The 3 large piles are still on the property. It wasn't just clearing and grubbing. There was oak trees in there. There were some fruit trees in there, large conifers that have been destroyed. A lot of habitat was lost for wildlife. And he did that before he did any of the permitting process. And so I'm just kind of curious on how many trees he needed to go back in with to make sure it's consistent with the environmental overlay that is over that district. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Any other opponents? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Elizabeth, did you want to address his concerns?
Yeah, I will address them. Elizabeth Hunter, 11850 Nicholas Street. So when we were here the first time, the comments that we got back were that Jim's development needed, the tree mitigation part of it needed to cover the previous work, which was permitted work. The permit's actually still open. We are trying to close it right now so that we can reopen a new permit with this project, because the previous one didn't cover the full area, just part of the area that's in this project. So that work was permitted work where the trees were removed. The ask from the planning department was that the tree mitigation study include previous tree removal and current planned tree removal, and it does that. So there's nothing that's out of compliance for the tree removal that's already been done, because it was done under a permit. It just hasn't, no tree mitigation has been done from that project, and it will be included in this one.
Say that again. So your last part about tree mitigation, would you say that again? I didn't follow you.
So the removal that he's done,
Yeah.
that was permitted by a different company. So I have not seen anything where the removal that happened had a tree mitigation replanting plan that went with it. And that may be why the planning department asked us to include planting from that work and the current proposed work. So we're planting back more trees than we would need to if we were just looking at our current work to cover that old work.
Okay, but I thought you said earlier the department's requiring 37 trees. Is that correct, Eric? And you want to go with 25?
Right, and that's just because of the changes that we made between when we were doing the rain garden design for stormwater versus doing the single outlot pond that we have proposed now. The numbers changed because the slopes and areas of disturbance changed, but it still encompasses everything from the previous tree removal and the current planned tree removal.
Okay. Any additional questions for Elizabeth?
Was that submitted, was the planting schematics part of the application?
Well, so what happened was in August, here's the accurate one that I turned in August. I turned this in August to address the tree planting, and then you can kind of see over here where it talks about the 25. When I resubmitted again in September, I didn't re-include this because nothing had changed on it. And I think it just got lost in the mix because we had submitted stuff over 2 months. And I didn't resubmit this because they already had it and nothing changed. And so that's what I need to talk to them about, is to make sure
So you
that.
previously submitted the 25.
Right.
If I'm wrong with this.
Well, the very first time we submitted, when we very first applied, it
Which
was
was
30, it was 37. That was earlier this summer.
37 was the original one.
That's right. That was when we had the rain garden design, and then some of the public works comments that we got back were that the stormwater couldn't be dealt with in easements because we had rain gardens in easements, and they wanted all the stormwater dealt with in outlots. And so we changed the design significantly to comply with that, and that's why the number changed from 37 to 25.
Your numbers changed.
Our
The
numbers.
recommendation in the report here is still the 37.
Well, and that's what I need to talk to them about, is whether or not that's accurate based on the right information
I'm sure
or
Eric
not.
will cover that when we
Yeah.
get there.
We'll let
Yes.
Eric- Okay.
Thank you.
Are you good, Mike?
Yeah, thank
you. Okay. We'll let Eric cover that. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional comments or questions before we go to Eric? Eric?
Yeah, so I'm not going to be able to accurately identify the number of trees as we sit here today. I haven't been involved in all the meetings and conversations. Yeah, plans change sometimes, so that what is being presented is quite possible. However, at this time, I can't verify what that true number is just on the fly. So I would propose modifying our recommendation for number 11 in the report that says, so currently the report says submit an acceptable tree canopy planting plan providing a minimum 37 mitigation trees within outlots as a part of a final plat submission. When I make the proposal, I am going to modify to eliminate providing a minimum 37 mitigation trees. So it'll be more vague, and we will have to just take a look at all the documents, make sure that we're going off the correct version and coordinate with the applicant so that when it comes through in the final plat, we can identify that true number at that time. So, but I think taking out that 37 just in vague, it might still end up being 37, or it could be 25, or it could be a different number. So, but by modification, I think that is the most accurate way to do it, and we'll make sure that the true count is accounted for. Regarding the, go ahead.
You go ahead. I thought
Okay.
you were probably going to say what I was going to ask.
I was going to move on to the waiver for sidewalks that's currently been advertised and within the agenda, and the proposal to eliminate street lights and then modify the sidewalks to only have it on one side. That would require an additional waiver from Chapter 53 requirements. So I would propose that we not act upon the Chapter 53 waiver regarding sidewalks at this time. We've done that before where we didn't have a clear support or opposition to a waiver, and we needed to analyze an issue further. That just came up actually across the street to the west when we had to delay one of those waivers, or I think 3 of them maybe, for further analysis. So that's what I would propose. I know we've done different things in the North Hills as far as reducing street lights, waving sidewalks, but usually it's not both. That's not what's being proposed by Elizabeth, but that would take further analysis on the city's part, looking at other projects and sites that we've looked at. So that would be my proposal of how to handle that, kind of to kick that item down the road, but it can be incorporated when the final plat is submitted.
So in a motion, we would eliminate approval of the waiver to section 5399 sidewalks. Just
Yeah.
don't include that in a motion.
Yeah, so I'm going to eliminate that when the city makes a recommendation here when we
Alright.
get to that point.
Okay.
But yeah, these 2 items aside, there has been good progress, I would say. Jason had mentioned continued conversations and coordination. We discussed that some in the pre-meeting regarding his site. I know it's not within the boundaries of the plat, but it's important to note since he did bring that up. So We have ongoing conversations with the fire department and access to their site and some possible options that can be looked at. Otherwise, there were many of the items as a reason for the layover previously that have been adequately addressed, and we are comfortable moving forward with recommendation of the preliminary plat. So unless you have any further questions or we want to discuss anything further, I will make the recommendation. So I'm going to strike the approval of the waiver to section sidewalks. I'm not including that. And I will modify condition number 11 to state, submit an acceptable tree canopy planting plan within outlots as a part of the final plat submission. So I will recommend approval of the preliminary plat subject to the 15 conditions listed in the report as modified by my testimony.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the preliminary plat subject to the 15 conditions as modified by Eric.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
You know, before Greg speaks, I forgot to make a comment because Elizabeth did refer to herself as an engineer planner. And we don't usually combine those words, although I consider Ryan Haas in Public Works one of those as well. So just
Just got to take 2 tests.
On agenda item number 11, any comments or questions? Eric?
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, yeah, so for agenda item number 11, sorry, I didn't specify number 7, so the last vote was 7. So on this one, we do have a similar condition, so I will modify in the recommendation number 3. So I'll state it here. Staff recommends approval of the special use permit subject to the 5 conditions in the report with the modification to condition number 3 to state submit an acceptable planting plan for mitigation trees located in outlots.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the special use permit subject to the 5 conditions with the exception of condition number 3, which we changed to submit an acceptable planting plan for mitigation of trees located on the outlots.
Got a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Franklin? Yes. Moore? Yes. Morris? Yes. Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo? Yes. Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Let's see. Agenda item number 12, case C3-23-190, applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha request approval of the 34th and Benton Community Redevelopment Area designation and extremely blighted area designation. Location, an area generally northwest and northeast of the I-80, I-48 interchange. Don, you're up.
Good afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. Yeah, this item asks you to designate a portion of the city as both a CRA, and that's community redevelopment area, and as an EBA, an extremely blighted area. Of course, now the purpose of designating something as a CRA, community redevelopment area, is it allows a developer to apply for the TIF program, use tax increment finance to assist with redevelopment projects within the CRA area, or CRA boundaries. The EBA designation is an additional designation which does a number of things, but one of those is that it also allows a longer 20-year TIF term. So we launched a study in response to a request from Patrick Mason, who has assembled a development team. They're working to towards redeveloping a pair of parcels on either side of Benton. The prominent one that you're probably all familiar with is on the south side of Benton. It contains the very large and prominent grain elevators or silos that are visible from the interstate, I-80. And it also includes a parcel to the north. So it's this parcel right along the Field Club recreational trail. And just north of that, collection of 3 or 4 buildings on this commercial site, also near the Field Club Trail. In any event, state law calls community redevelopment areas blighted and substandard, terms we're not really particularly fond of in the planning department, but it's what we have to work with. The state law also gives a definition of both, and an area, a study area, must comply with both definitions to be able to be designated as a community redevelopment area. Now you have a study, Exhibit I, in your packets and available to the public. The full definitions are in that study, along with the criteria for designation of a CRA. And it also shows how the study area, which includes these 3 census block groups, shows how that study area meets the criteria for CRA designation. We use 3 census block groups. 2 of them are from Census Tract 33, or pardon me, that should be 3402, that's mislabeled on this map. But it's these 2 census tracts in any event here, and the 3rd one is on the other side, 5480. Ultimately, we determined that the study area, all 3 of those block groups, does meet the criteria for the CRA designation. We're looking at a recommended area that's just a little bit smaller. We're leaving out a lot of this residential, homogeneous residential neighborhood from the area we're recommending for designation. In terms of meeting the definitions in the state law, Part B of the blighted definition has 5 criteria. You only need to meet 1 to be eligible for designation as a CRA. In this case, our study area, those 3 block groups, meet 3 of the criteria. The per capita income is, of the 3, cumulatively, of the 3 block groups, is $21,480. Citywide per capita income is $36,749. The unemployment rate within the study area exceeds the threshold of 120% of the state unemployment rate, and the average age of structures exceeds the 40-year threshold. In fact, the structures in this area are probably about 110 years old on average. So we only need to meet one of those criteria. The area meets 3. And in terms of the blighted Part A and the substandard definitions, those relate a little bit more towards building conditions, infrastructure conditions. We did a windshield survey. As you might expect in an area where the buildings are over 100 years old on average, you see some wear and tear. Overall, the area is not horribly blighted, not a lot of boarded up buildings, but there is some wear and tear there. And in looking at the assessor records for quality of buildings, about 30% of the buildings are in the fair, poor, or worn out levels, which is below average. And the infrastructure is quite old, so it shows a little bit of wear and tear as well. So we, in doing the windshield survey and reviewing the building condition data, determined that the area does indeed comply with the definitions of substandard. In terms of the extremely blighted area criteria, the poverty rate needs to exceed 20%. Poverty rate for the 3 block groups cumulatively is 20.1%, so it exceeds the threshold. And the unemployment rate needs to be, for an EBA, 200% of the state rate. And that state rate is 3.29. 200% is 6.59. The unemployment for this area is 6.65. So it exceeds the threshold for the unemployment. In any event, we have found with our study, which you have, that the area is eligible for the CRA and EBA designations, and we ask for your support for those designations. Again, this is the area we're recommending for designation in the black boundary. Sure.
Is the city's goal that these designations, like how long does this designation apply in this area? Because is it the goal that these apply for lengthy periods of times or forever so that people can access these income tax credits and that the TIF can be extended? Or would these, like this blighted designation eventually go away through
I'm
some-
following your question, but it's kind of twofold there. The city's goal on this is to get reinvestment into areas of the city, particularly the older, more bedraggled areas of the city, where the amount of investment and redevelopment activity is a little bit slower than we'd like to see.
Right.
So that's really the goal. In terms of the time period, at present, when we designate something as a CRA, or at least it has been this way, the CRA designation remains until there is an active move by the city council to de-designate that. So it just kind of stays in place. State law has been changed, and we're going to be looking at areas now that have been designated for 30 years or more. So it may not be a permanent type of thing. Ultimately, though, the city's goal is to see sites redeveloped. And you take a look at that site with the grain elevators, the silos, demolition costs there are going to be horrendous. And we really can't expect to see that site redeveloped without some support from the TIF program.
Who owns those grain elevators right now?
I'm sorry, a little louder.
Who owns them?
Who owns the site?
The grain elevators.
I believe it's the gentleman in the back. That is the development team that had approached us with the request. Patrick Mason and his group.
Okay.
I think it's fairly recent that they closed on that.
And those are the elevators north, just north of 80.
Just north of I-80, yes. Between I-80 and Benton, and then that other parcel.
I jog over there. I love it.
You like the elevator?
I jog over there. It's very nice.
We know we're sitting.
Well, they're certainly a landmark, and they have some character, and they contain.
Out of curiosity, who owns that passageway beneath 80? Like is that the state of Nebraska own? If it's anything.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
It's in the right of way. In any event, to recap, the study area meets the state criteria based on our study for both the CRA and the EVA designations. Any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
I'll be close
Thank you,
by.
Don.
Thank you, Don.
Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments, questions?
Eric. Sydney, I would just add to part of your question about the state tax credit as a part of the extremely blight designation. There is a defined time frame for that currently in state law. Now that could always be extended. I don't know if that's part of the discussion. Community development law in the state legislature, there's always a lot of conversations about that, and so it's kind of an always ongoing topic. And you know, like there was discussions in the latest spring session that maybe weren't acted upon by the legislature or the urban affairs subcommittee, but you know, maybe they'll be back on board. So you know, Don touched on, you know, some legislative action that maybe we'll have to look at, you know, redesignating and things like that for a certain time frame. But it's kind of still a moving target. But the tax credit, there is a defined time limit. It's for a few more years, I know.
And that's not one time. It's yearly credit?
No, it's a one-time credit. Yeah, and it goes into home ownership and things like that. So
Thank you.
while I have the mic on, I'll just state that staff recommends approval.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item number 13, case C3-23-228. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. Request approval of the 40th and Franklin Extremely Blighted Area designation. Location, an area generally bounded by Parker Street on the south, Ames Avenue on the north, 40th Street on the west, and 30th Street on the east, as well as various adjacent areas. Don, you're up again.
Yeah, good afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. And this is kind of along the same vein as the previous item in terms of what it means, but instead of being both a CRA and an EBA designation, we are asking for you to consider the designation of a portion of the city as only add the designation of extremely blighted area. An area cannot be designated as extremely blighted unless it is also in a CRA. And I would note that the area within the black boundary is a subject area we're talking about designating today. The green areas around it are already designated as CRAs, but almost everything in this image is already within a community redevelopment area. So the subject area here is already designated as a community redevelopment area. We are asking for the additional designation as an extremely blighted area. Now, as previously mentioned, EBA, extremely blighted areas, allow TIF projects to use a longer 20-year TIF term. They provide a $5,000 state income tax credit to owner-occupant home buyers, people buying homes for their primary residence. And it also allows competitive programs that assist affordable housing projects to give additional positive consideration to developers who are working on a site for affordable housing that's located in an extremely blighted area. The criteria beyond being already a CRA, there are two criteria: poverty rate and an unemployment rate. We were asked by Holy Name Housing Corporation to conduct an EBA study of this area, and within that black boundary there are 7 census block groups. We have kind of compiled them all together as a single area for this purpose of this designation. Holy Name is looking at an affordable housing development that they'd like to do at about 40th and Franklin, roughly where you see that yellow X, kind of small on that map. And they would like to have the ability to have a 20-year TIF term. They'd also like to be able to sell the homes to home buyers who could then take advantage of that $5,000 income tax credit, state income tax. Anyway, we studied the population and demographics of the 7 block groups within this area. I used the most current census data to determine that the combined population of the study area has an unemployment rate of 13.1%, and that exceeds that 200% of the state rate threshold. Again, that state rate threshold is set at 6.59%, so the 13.1% exceeds that. This area also has a poverty rate of 26.6%, which again exceeds the threshold, which is 20%. Thus, it meets the criteria for designation, and we ask for you to support the recommendation to designate the area. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, Don. Thank you, Don. Any other proponents?
Hello, Christian Gray, 1134 South 30th Avenue, 68105. We'll be on the next agenda item, but this is an area that we serve in the community with organization InComm and Community Development. I feel like that would be an appropriate designation for the area for some of the affordable housing needs.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, I'll close public hearing. Additional comments, questions? Eric.
Recommend approval.
Do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Morris? Yes. Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Mr. Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay, we're going to take agenda items 14 and 15 together. Agenda item number 14, case C3-23-245. Applicant in common, request approval of the Walnut Hill Neighborhood Plan. Location, an area generally bound by Decatur Street on the north, 36th and 38th Street on the east, Izzard Street on the south, and Northwest Radial Highway on the west. Agenda item number 15, case C3-23-246. Applicant Planning Department on behalf of the City of Omaha. Request approval of an amendment to the land use element of the city's master plan regarding the Walnut Hill neighborhood. Location, an area generally bound by Decatur Street on the north, 36th and 38th Street on the east, Izzard Street on the south, and Northwest Radial Highway on the west. And Christian, are you presenting? Okay.
Good afternoon again, Christian Gray, 1134 South 30th Avenue, 68105, representing In-Common Community Development today. I'm available for questions, no specific comments, but I'm here on site if you have questions.
Yeah, thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents?
My name is Mary Minturn, 3416 Hawthorne Avenue, 68131 in the Bemis Park neighborhood. Our neighborhood, according to Omaha City neighborhood maps, extends from or is bounded by 40th on the west, 33rd on the east, Hamilton and Cummings north and south. I just really want some clarification of the boundaries of this Walnut Hill neighborhood plan. Looking at the map that they provided and was posted on our neighborhood email and our neighborhood Facebook sites, it's really unclear, and it looked to me as if the plan included the Walnut Hill Reservoir area, which is named Walnut Hill, but it's actually part of Bemis Park. And if MUD ever sells the west half on 40th Street, I know In-Common mentioned in their plan that they would do some multi-use development of that site. So right now I think it's a moot point because I don't think the land is up for sale. But we just would need, we didn't get really any input on their plan. One of our neighbors, I think Emma Kinghorn, was on their committee that was listed on the plan that they sent to the neighborhood. But we did not get any input from her. I asked our neighborhood president, the neighborhood association, if he had any input from her, from In-Common concerning this plan, and he didn't. We do hold monthly neighborhood association meetings, and we didn't, they have never appeared at one of those and spoke to us about it. So if that western part of that MUD property becomes part of their plan, I would just request that they include our input or ask for it, speak at one of our meetings maybe.
Okay, Mayor, when you said you hold a monthly neighborhood
Association
meeting, did you say nobody has spoken to you? Is that what you?
Correct, at the
Okay.
meetings. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
This is for Bemis Park.
Bemis Park Neighborhood Association. Mm-hmm. Like I said, we did have a neighbor who was listed as on their committee, but we got no reports from her.
That lives in Bemis Park.
Correct, yeah. She's a fairly new neighbor, so she doesn't know the neighborhood very well yet, maybe.
Mary, have you invited someone from In-Common or the development team to participate in one of your meetings?
I haven't, personally, I don't know, actually. If we have a member who manages those invitations to our meetings generally, and I don't know if an invitation was extended. But at the time, we didn't know until recently what this plan was, so there wouldn't have been much time to have them.
And you said you needed a boundary clarification. And
Yeah.
What is your address?
3416 Hawthorne Avenue. So on this agenda here today, so Izzard Street to the south. So Izzard doesn't cut through Bemis Park, it ends at 40th Street. So I kind of wasn't sure what their boundary was there. Since they mentioned 36th and 38th Streets to the east, which do run through Bemis Park neighborhood.
Okay.
We'd have to look at a map to make it make sense, I guess.
Okay. Anything else, Mary?
No, I was hoping that they would have a map up here so I could tell for sure, but that would be helpful. The map that we got online is really difficult to read. I did talk to Mr. Seaton about that a little bit.
When you say the map you got online, you meant did you go to the City of Omaha's planning department side? Or?
No, well, planning department sent out an email to the neighborhood associations.
And that map?
That map.
Okay.
Yes,
fine.
it's small, it's difficult to read the streets.
Gotcha.
So we just, some clarification, and then if they do include the Bemis Park neighborhood in their plan, that we be given an opportunity to participate and give our input.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Christian, did you want to come up and?
Sure.
We'll need your name and address again.
Yes, sure. Christian Gray, 1134 South 30th Avenue, 68105.
Was there a meeting offered to the residents of this area, or?
Yes. So what we did is we developed, for this neighborhood plan, we developed a, sorry, this is a little bit large. Just thought Mary might benefit from this map. We put out a call. So the way that we develop our neighborhood plans, both for Walnut Hill and Park Avenue, is through development of a steering committee. So we take representatives from each of the neighborhood associations that are directly within or in proximity to the neighborhood plan to make sure that they are communicating back and forth as a council representative, if you will, with the neighborhood. So apologize if that didn't get back and forth as clearly as possible. Two things, I suppose. One is, here's the boundaries, maybe in a little bit more clear and simple terms. Secondly, I believe this is directly out of the neighborhood plan that we're submitting for approval today. There is the plan, I believe, for the Walnut Hill Reservoir, which is a shared amenity between all the neighborhoods in that area, is simply the goal to get it shovel ready for development. So it's to tear down the existing infrastructure. I don't believe there was anything in the plan currently that states what the purpose of the future use for this site would be. Only we've collected the opinions of neighbors pretty broadly, in fact, that everybody wants that torn down and repurposed for development. So no plans at this time for the area, but this is the neighborhood boundary for the plan.
Is Mary's address included here?
No.
Okay.
Mary lives in Bemis Park, which is just to the south or
Okay.
southeast. But she's basically stating the boundaries of Bemis Park Neighborhood Association includes the reservoir. So I think she just wants to be involved in any potential, future conversations or development of the Walnut Hill Reservoir. And I can touch on that here in a little bit as well.
Okay.
And I'll just say really quick, Christian and Mary, the team that Christian leads at InCommon, they could probably put on a master class in what community engagement looks like and how it should be done really well. So if you extend an invitation to Christian or his team to participate in something, they'll likely be there, but you'll probably have to extend the invitation.
Okay. And to Mary as well, we'd love to have you on the team moving forward as well. So if you'd like to participate as a steering team member, we'd love to have you on.
Good. All right. Thank you, Christian.
Yep. Thank you.
Any additional comments, questions? Eric.
Yeah, so touch on the two different agenda items. So obviously Christian came and spoke about the Walnut Hill neighborhood plan, and This has been an ongoing effort, as I discussed in the pre-meeting, for a couple of years. It involves a lot of different parties, a lot of different engagement, outreach to the community, surveys, different events for public feedback, along with that further refinement with the steering committee, which includes several members of the community and neighborhood at large. So earlier this year, Christian and his team and with InCommon and then also Spark came to the city and had conversations with our neighborhood planning division, with Mariana Foro and others in that division. And then we included larger meetings that included parks, public works, planning department staffs, just to provide feedback and commentary on the neighborhood plan. And really, we are here as the city to recognize this plan. There's nothing binding in it, or there's no dollars committed for any potential projects or improvements as a result are identified in the plan. It's just really kind of a visionary document for the neighborhood, and we think that's good. And there's been a lot of engagement. The most recent meeting we had last week, the city sent out about 700 letters to every property owner within the boundary of the plan. And so it wouldn't have gone to Mary because she lives close by, because she's not within, but there's been a lot of outreach, and there can continue to be so. A lot of the commentary is on the MUD reservoir, and MUD is still in ownership about that. So we'll see where that goes, and if there's any potential development, of that site. Ultimately, that has to come down to MUD if they're willing to part with that, and then what are those next steps. So as the city recognizes the neighborhood plan, because of this extra look and review of the neighborhood, we took it as an opportunity to update our future land use map, which is part of the master plan, as you're aware. And so agenda item 15 recognizes some of those changes and just that extra review that city staff has done. So there is some updating of some of the classifications on the future land use map. That does not change anybody's zoning. That does not require any changes of anybody. But if properties were to redevelop, we have an updated view of what potentially is the best and most accurate use for those properties. So I won't go into the specifics on number 15. Obviously, there's hundreds of parcels, and some had changes and some did not. But we can continue to communicate with staff. There haven't been a lot of questions about the actual agenda item 15 and changes to individual properties. So with that being said, for the neighborhood plan, which is agenda item number 14, the city recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Let the record show before we take the vote that Sydney Franklin left the meeting.
Yes.
Oh, she's back? Oh, okay. That's all right. No, not yet. Sydney has rejoined the meeting. Kathy, will you record the vote, please?
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Morris? Yes. Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo? Yes. Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Agenda item 15.
Staff recommends approval.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Sotolongo? Yes. Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore? Yes. Morris? Yes. Pate?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay. Thank you, Christian. Agenda item number 23, case C7-23-240, applicant Frontier Justice, request approval of a conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in the CC District, location 2828 South 82nd Avenue. And David, you're presenting.
I am. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon. David Levy, Baird Home Law Firm, 1700 Farnham Street. On behalf of the applicant, with me today is Jason Wagner with Frontier Justice. The request before you is simply a conditional use permit to recognize a new owner of this facility. This type of business has operated in this location since 2014. We have met with the planning department, the police department, and talked with a representative of the neighborhood association. All have expressed that they are comfortable with this proposal, and of course the planning department recommends approval. With that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, David. Any other proponents? Seeing none, are there any opponents? Seeing none, close public hearing. Additional comments, questions? I just wanted to say to Jason that sorry about, well, can't say sorry. I understand that you're no longer going to have a retail operation for firearms there. Doesn't seem fair in this day and age, but in this day and age, that seems to be what's happening these days. But I wish you could have the retail, and that's not part of our motion here or approval here today, or lack of approval. But anyways, just wanted to make that comment. Yeah. Eric.
Yeah, so obviously we discussed this in great length in the pre-meeting. Appreciate David's comments there as well. Although David missed the opportunity here to refer to himself as an attorney planner. For those that don't know, David's previous life, he was a city planner actually, so it's okay. Missed opportunity, but that's okay. So obviously we described the continued and good coordination, I would say, with all of city departments, but specifically the police department. And we talked about how we have worded the conditions that are listed in the report, and it sounds like they're well on their way to implementation of those necessary items. So staff will recommend approval of the conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation, subject to the 9 conditions in the report.
Do we have a motion?
Just before I do that, I just want to also commend Jason for being, a good neighbor, a good citizen, business citizen of our community, and being able to modify your business plan significantly, I'm sure, and able to be able to continue and offer your other services. And thanks again. With that, I'll motion to approve the conditional use permit to allow indoor sports and recreation in the CC district, subject to the 9 conditions in the staff report.
We have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Yes.
Rosacker?
Yes.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore? Morris? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
all.
David.
I
Thank you,
won't
Jason.
take up Eric's other opportunity, but I did miss the opportunity really sincerely to thank the city and thank the police department. They've really been great to work with on this. They've spent a lot of time on it, visited the site, and I think they'll continue to be a great collaborator in this. So I want to make sure that's on the record. Thank you all.
Good. Thank you. You bet. Do we have a motion for the September meeting minutes, public and pre-meeting? I said that kind of badly. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Franklin?
Yes.
Moore? Morris? Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo? Rosacker?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Approved 7-0.
Before asking for a motion on adjournment, as Dave Fanslau just pointed out, we're empty. Holy cow. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion, a second. Kathy, please record the vote.
Moore? Morris? Pate?
Yes.
Sotolongo?
Good comment there at
Rosacker?
the end.
Yes.
Franklin? Mr. Chair?
That was a good, yes. That was a good
Approved
comment at the
7-0.
end.